I walked into that birthday party with a savings account printout in my jacket pocket and said 4 words. My son-in-law went pale as chalk. His brother grabbed his arm like he was about to pass out, and my daughter just started crying, right there in front of the cake she'd baked herself, the one with the lopsided frosting and the little plastic 5 candle. Because my grandson was turning 5, and she'd tried so hard to make it perfect, even though I could see from the front door that she looked like she hadn't slept in a week. That was the moment I understood exactly how long it had been going on. Let me back up. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I'm 63 years old. I worked 31 years in commercial plumbing supply. I raised my daughter Nora alone after her mother passed from pancreatic cancer when Nora was 11, and I know my kid. I know when something's wrong. I've known since she was small. The way her left shoulder dips when she's carrying something she won't say out loud. When she was 14 and got cut from the school play, that shoulder dropped for 2 weeks. When a college boyfriend cheated on her, same thing. I used to tease her about it gently. I'd say, "Left shoulder's talking, sweetheart." She'd roll her eyes and eventually tell me what was going on. About 8 months before that birthday party, I noticed the shoulder. It started small. She called less. When she did call, there was always background noise. The TV too loud, or she was just running out somewhere, or the baby needed something. Nora had never been like that with me. We talked twice a week, easy, for years. Real conversations. After she married Cody Brannigan 3 years ago, the calls got shorter, but I chalked it up to new marriage, new life. Cody was fine. Quiet. Worked in logistics. Nothing that set off alarm bells. His family I'd met twice. His older brother Stuart and Stuart's wife Pamela, and their mother Loretta. And they were the kind of people who smiled a lot and said very little of substance. But plenty of families are like that. I didn't think much of it. Then one Sunday in March I called Nora and she didn't pick up, which was unusual but not alarming. I called Monday. Same thing. Tuesday I sent a text, just checking in, call when you can. Thursday she texted back, "Sorry Dad, been crazy busy, talk soon." No punctuation except the period. Nora always used exclamation points with me. Always. Even in the dumb texts. On my way. Love you. That period sat in my chest like a small stone. I called Cody. He picked up on the second ring, which surprised me. "Mr. Hutchins," he said. He always called me that. Never Warren, never Dad, always Mr. Hutchins 3 years in. Nora's fine, she's just been fighting a little cold. You know how she gets run down. I said I did. I said to tell her I called. He said he would. He didn't sound cold or rude. He sounded like someone reading from a card. Now, I want to be honest about something. I am not a man who acts on feeling alone. I'm a problem solver. I think things through. I don't have what my late wife used to call emotional impulsivity, so I didn't drive over there. I didn't call back 3 more times. I let another week pass. I waited. What I did do was start paying attention. Nora and Cody lived about 40 minutes from me, in a neighborhood called Creekside Commons in Ballard County. It's a decent neighborhood. Older ranch-style houses, mature trees, the kind of street where people still wave from driveways. I'd help them with the down payment. $30,000 I'd saved specifically for that purpose. Money I'd set aside after I sold the house Nora grew up in. I didn't want anything for it. That's not how I operate with family, but I did put my name on the mortgage as a co-signer, because Cody's credit had some old issues, and it was the only way the bank would move forward. That detail becomes important later. By April, Nora had called me exactly twice in 6 weeks. Both calls were under 10 minutes. Both times she said everything was fine. The shoulder. I couldn't see it over the phone, but I could hear the equivalent in her voice. Clipped. Careful. Like she was choosing each word in a room where someone might be listening. My neighbor Hattie Crenshaw changed everything. Hattie is 71, sharp as a tack, completely unself-conscious about the fact that she pays attention to people. She grew up in a small town in Alabama, and she says people in small towns survive by watching. She lives next door to me, and she has a sister, Doreen, who lives 4 streets over from Nora and Cody. I did not know this until the Saturday in April, when Hattie knocked on my door with a plate of oatmeal cookies and a look on her face that I recognized immediately as the look of someone who's been sitting on something uncomfortable. She sat down at my kitchen table, and she told me that her sister Doreen had mentioned something. Doreen's backyard shares a fence line with the property behind Nora and Cody's house. Not adjacent, but close enough that over the past month, Doreen had twice heard shouting from that direction. A man's voice, mostly. She couldn't make out words. But once she'd seen Nora in the front yard, and Nora had been wearing long sleeves in 70-degree weather, and when Doreen waved, Nora had waved back quickly and gone inside. Hattie said she debated whether to tell me. She decided she had to. I thanked her. I ate one of the cookies. I waited until she left, and then I sat at that table for about 40 minutes, very still, doing what I do when I need to think clearly, which is nothing. Just sitting, just letting it settle. Then I called my nephew Craig, who works in financial compliance and knows things about account access and documentation that I do not. I told him what I was dealing with. I didn't have proof of anything yet, but I told him my instinct, and Craig has learned over the years to take my instincts seriously. He walked me through what to look for if there was financial control involved: unauthorized access to joint accounts, patterns of cash withdrawal, credit cards opened without knowledge. He sent me a list of questions to get Nora thinking if I could get her alone. Getting her alone was the problem. Every time I suggested visiting, Nora had a reason it wasn't a good time. Cody was working from home. The baby was napping on an unusual schedule. She was going to Stuart and Pamela's for dinner. I started writing them down, the excuses, in a small notebook. I'm not proud of it. It felt like something a paranoid person does. But I wrote them down. Then came the week before my grandson Jamie's 5th birthday. Nora called me. Actually called, not texted, on a Tuesday evening. Cody wasn't home. I could tell because she spoke differently. Fewer sentences. She laughed once at something I said. A real laugh. She told me about a book Jamie had been obsessed with. About a dog who wanted to be an astronaut. And she did the voices Jamie did when he retold it. For about 7 minutes I felt like I was talking to my daughter again. Then she said, quietly, "Dad, I don't think I want you to come to the birthday party." I kept my voice completely even. I asked why. She said, "Cody thought it might be too many people. His family would be there. Stuart, Pamela, Loretta." She said Jamie would have plenty of people. I asked her if she was okay. Long pause. "I'm fine, Dad. Left shoulder." I said okay. I said I understood. I told her I'd send a gift and we'd celebrate separately. She sounded relieved, which told me everything. I called Craig that night. Then I called my bank. Here's what I found. Moving carefully through the documentation I was entitled to as co-signer on their mortgage, and as a secondary account holder on the joint savings account Nora and I had maintained since she turned 18, the one where I'd deposited birthday money, emergency funds, the down payment money as it moved through. Cody's name had been added to that account after the wedding. I had not closed it because Nora asked me to keep it open as a safety net. I had assumed she was being practical. I did not understand until I pulled 3 months of statements that the account had been systematically drained. Not all at once. Slowly. 300 here. 500 there. Cash withdrawals, not purchases. Always ATM transactions, always in amounts under $1,000. Always 2 or 3 days apart, so no single transaction triggered an alert. In 91 days, $19,040 had been removed from an account that Nora and I had built up to $22,000 over 8 years. Nora's name was on every withdrawal because her card was being used. But I knew my daughter. Nora did not take cash from ATMs. Nora used her debit card for everything, kept every receipt, still used a paper budget sheet the way I taught her when she was 16. Someone was using her card. And she either didn't know or couldn't say. Craig helped me print everything. Time-stamped, organized, highlighted. He said if there was financial abuse happening, this was evidence. He used that word, abuse, and I had to put the phone down for a second. Jamie's birthday was Saturday. I decided I was going. I didn't call ahead. I drove the 40 minutes, parked 2 houses down, walked up to the front door with the printed statements folded in my inside jacket pocket and a wrapped Lego set under my arm. The Space Shuttle won because of the astronaut dog book. And I rang the bell. Pamela opened the door. I watched her face do 3 things very fast. Recognition, panic, something she tried to cover with a smile. "Warren," she said, "Nora didn't mention—" I I said. Is my daughter home? I stepped inside before she could answer. The living room had a cluster of balloons, a folding table with a cake, streamers in blue and green. Stuart was on the couch with a beer. Loretta was in the armchair nearest the window, holding a paper plate. Cody was standing near the kitchen doorway, and when he saw me, he went completely still. Not surprised still. Caught still. There's a difference. Surprised is wide-eyed. Caught as a man who's already doing calculations. Jamie came barreling out from the hallway in a paper crown. Grandpa! I crouched down and held him. He smelled like birthday cake and grass. He showed me a toy fire truck he'd gotten from someone. I told him it was the best fire truck I'd ever seen. I meant it. Nora came out of the kitchen. She was wearing long sleeves. It was 74 degrees outside. When she saw me, her face did something complicated. Relief and fear folding together in the same second. And her left shoulder dropped. I gave her a hug and I held on a little longer than usual. She held on too. I could feel Cody watching us. I straightened up and looked at him. He'd moved closer. Stuart had stood up from the couch. Loretta had set down her paper plate. Cody said carefully, Mr. Hutchins, we weren't expecting you. I know, I said. Jamie's 5. I wasn't going to miss that. The next 30 minutes were what I can only describe as a performance. Cody was pleasant. Stuart was pleasant. Loretta complimented my jacket. Pamela refilled everyone's drinks. Nora stayed close to me and barely spoke. Jamie opened his Lego set and screamed with joy, which was the only completely genuine thing that happened in that room for half an hour. At some point, Cody drifted into the kitchen. Stuart followed. I watched them through the pass-through window, having a low, quick conversation. I excused myself from the table and stood where I could hear. Stuart said, How much does he know? Cody said, Nothing. He can't know anything. It's her account, too. Stuart, you need to move the rest before. That was enough. I walked into the kitchen. Both of them stopped talking. Cody had his phone in his hand. I said very quietly, because Jamie was in the next room and I was not going to ruin this child's birthday with raised voices. I need you both to step outside. Cody said, Warren, this isn't outside, I said. Please. The please was not a courtesy. It was a warning. We went to the backyard. The three of us stood on the patio beside a plastic playhouse that Jamie had outgrown. I reached into my jacket pocket and took out the folded papers and handed them to Cody. I said, I'm on that account. I've always been on that account. I have 3 months of statements showing ATM withdrawals from Nora's card totaling over $19,000. Nora doesn't do ATM withdrawals. She hasn't done a cash withdrawal from any account in 4 years. I went back further, so you're going to tell me right now what's been happening, or I'm going to call the police and we can have that conversation with them. Cody stared at the papers. His jaw worked like he was trying to find a sentence. Stuart started talking first. He said it was a loan, that Cody had borrowed from the account temporarily to cover some business costs. Stuart had a logistics side operation that had hit a rough patch, and they were planning to pay it back. He said Nora knew. He said she'd agreed. I said, let's go ask her. Neither of them moved. I said, I'll take that as your answer. I went back inside and I sat down next to Nora at the table. Jamie was busy with his Lego instructions. Loretta and Pamela were watching me with the careful stillness of people who are deciding whether to intervene or disappear. I said to Nora, quietly enough that Jamie couldn't hear over the crackling of Lego bags, I pulled the statements from our joint account. I know about the withdrawals. Did you authorize them? Her eyes filled up immediately. She shook her head. Such a small motion. Such an enormous thing. She said barely above a whisper. He said it was temporary. He said it was temporary. He said if I told anyone he'd... She stopped. Looked at Jamie. Looked back at me. I put my hand over hers on the table. I said, I'm going to take care of this. You don't have to be scared anymore. I called Craig from the backyard. He was already standing by because Craig knows me. I called the non-emergency police line and spoke to a dispatcher who connected me to an officer named Dawson. I explained the situation clearly. The financial transactions, the statements I had, the fact that my daughter had just told me she had not authorized the withdrawals. Officer Dawson said he'd send someone over. I gave him the address. While I was on the phone, Cody came outside again. He said we should talk. He said it could all be worked out. This didn't need to get complicated. It was a family matter. I noticed he did not once say he was innocent. He said it didn't need to get complicated. That's a different thing. I said 2 officers are on their way. If you want to leave, that's your choice. But this property is co-signed by me, so I'd think carefully about what you do next. He went back inside. I don't know exactly what happened in the living room in the next 12 minutes, because I stayed outside. What I know is that when Officer Dawson and his partner arrived, Loretta was standing in the front yard with her purse and Pamela was on the phone, and Stewart had somehow made his way out through the garage and was sitting in his car at the curb, which Officer Dawson noted. Cody answered the door when they knocked. He was too calm, the kind of calm that's actually terror being managed very hard. He let them in. I sat in the backyard with Jamie for a while. He showed me everything about the Lego shuttle. He was very serious about the instructions. He gets that from Nora, who gets it from me. I held it together for him. That's what grandfathers are for. It took 2 weeks for the full picture to come together with Craig's help, a family law attorney, Shasson, who Hattie's son had used in a divorce case, and documents filed with the county. The $19,000 in withdrawals was substantiated. There were 2 additional credit cards opened in Nora's name without her knowledge, a furniture account and a store card carrying a combined balance of just over $8,000. All of it had gone to Stewart's logistics company, which turned out to be the kind of business that exists mostly on paper. Cody was charged with financial fraud and identity theft. Stewart was named as a co-conspirator. The DA moved forward with both of them. Nora filed for divorce 10 days after Jamie's birthday. She and Jamie moved in with me for a while, 2 months, almost 3. I gave them the big bedroom. I bought the astronaut dog book in hardcover because she said Jamie's paperback was falling apart. Every morning I made scrambled eggs, because that's what Jamie wanted every single morning, without exception. And I was not going to be the grandfather who ran out of eggs. I cannot explain to you what it felt like to hear him running down the hallway at 6:45 in the morning, and to know that he was safe and she was safe, and she was safe, and nobody in this house was taking anything from either of them. Nora started seeing a counselor in June. She's still going. She told me last month that she'd been scared for a long time that I would blame her for not telling me sooner. I told her that a person can only do what they can see a way to do, and that she'd been in something that was designed to make her not see. I don't know if that's the right thing to say. I'm not a counselor. But she cried and then she laughed a little, and that combination, crying and then laughing, that's been the sound of our household lately, and I have decided it's my favorite sound in the world. The mortgage situation resolved in my favor. I won't get into every detail, but when you're a co-signer with documented evidence of financial misconduct by the other parties, the legal pathway is clearer than you think. Cody is gone from that house. Nora and Jamie moved back in October, once she felt ready. She changed the locks. She took her mother's ceramic bowl out of the closet where it had apparently been sitting for 2.5 years. Cody said it cluttered the shelves and put it back on the kitchen counter where it belongs. The first time I came over for dinner after she moved back, she'd made pot roast, her mother's recipe. The ceramic bowl was sitting on the counter with salt and pepper, and some dried rosemary Nora grows in a pot by the window. She'd set the table with the good placemats. And Jamie had drawn a sign that said, "Welcome me, Grandpa," in green crayon, the A's all backwards the way 5-year-olds do. I sat down at that table, and I thought about the birthday party, about the folded papers in my jacket, about the sound of 2 men in a kitchen, thinking they were invisible. I thought about my wife, who would have known something was wrong 6 months before I figured it out, because she always did. I thought about my daughter at 11 years old, standing at a graveside in a coat that was slightly too small because she'd grown over the winter, holding my hand, and me thinking, I will not let anything else hurt her. I will not. I didn't always get it right. I was late to this one. I missed months I shouldn't have missed. I think about that, but I got there. The old man got there. If you're listening to this and you're a parent watching your kid disappear slowly into something you can't name, trust a shoulder drop. Trust the period where there should be an exclamation point. Trust your gut, then back it up with documents. Because documents are what courts respect, and courts are what matter in the end. And if you're watching your account statements, know what's on them. Know every line. because the people who want to take from you and yours are counting on you not looking. I looked, that's all it took. I've thought a lot about timing, about the months I didn't push hard enough, the calls I took at face value, the weeks I told myself I was respecting Nora's space, when really I was just avoiding the thing I was afraid to find. Here's what I've come to understand. The people who take from others, the Cotties and Stewarts of this world, they don't announce themselves. They move slowly. They rely on your good faith, your patience, your desire not to cause a scene. They count on the fact that decent people second-guess themselves. That's not an accident. That's the method. And if you're a person who raised your kid to believe in family and trust and giving people the benefit of the doubt, they will use every one of those values against you and against the people you love. What stopped it wasn't anger. I want to be clear about that. Anger was there, certainly, when I read those statements. $19,000, 91 days, cash withdrawals in careful, deliberate increments. I felt something cold and sharp move through me. But I didn't act from that. I acted from something quieter. Documentation. Phone calls. Knowing which account I was still legally attached to and why. 31 years in a trade teaches you that problems don't get solved by emotion alone. They get solved by understanding exactly what you're working with and moving precisely. Cody and Stewart made a calculated choice. They decided that Nora was isolated enough, that I was distant enough, that no one was paying close enough attention. They were almost right. That's the part that stays with me. They were almost right, not because I'm a bad father, but because they were counting on the ordinary friction of modern family life. Busy schedules, distance, the politeness that keeps you from asking the uncomfortable question one more time. They weaponized normalcy. And I nearly let them. What I tell any parent sitting where I was sitting 8 months before that birthday party is this. The discomfort of asking too many questions is nothing compared to what happens when you ask too few. I was taught my whole life that it's rude to pry, that adults deserve privacy, that you trust family until you have a reason not to. All of that is true, up to a point. But trust without attention isn't love. It's just absence wearing love's name. Nora didn't tell me because she couldn't see a clear way out, and because Cody had made sure of that. That's not weakness on her part. That's what sustained pressure does to a person. It narrows the visible options until the walls look like the whole world. What broke it open wasn't a dramatic confrontation. It was Hattie knocking on my door with oatmeal cookies and a look on her face. It was Craig walking me through a spreadsheet on a Tuesday night. It was me sitting at my kitchen table, doing nothing for 40 minutes, just letting the truth settle, so I could think clearly. The outcome Cody got, the charges, the divorce, the loss of a house he never deserved to live in, that wasn't luck or fate. It was the direct result of choices he made, compounded over time, meeting a man who eventually looked closely at the numbers. Actions have weight. They accumulate. You can defer the accounting, but you cannot cancel it. He understood that when I handed him those folded papers on the patio and watched his face do the math. Jamie asked me last month why Grandpa Warren comes over so much now. Nora told him that Grandpa Warren is their person. Jamie thought about it for a second and said, like a fire truck. I have no idea what that means, but I'll take it. That ceramic bowl is still on the counter. It's going to stay there.